I would like to acknowledge I'm speaking to you from the lands of the Wurundjeri Wurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here on the call today. So my name's Sophie Sushan. I'm one of the Digital Transformation Consultants here at the Digital Transformation Hub, a part of the Info Exchange group with Connecting Up. The Hub focuses on digital technology as an enabler to support service transformation, new ways of working, and assisting non-for-profits on the broader digital transformation journey. We begin with a little bit of housekeeping. We're on Microsoft Teams today to make it as interactive as possible. So feel free to turn your camera on and stay on mute during the presentation. If you have any technical issues, please type it in the chat box and I can assist you. We really encourage you to ask as many questions as you think of during the session. No question is too silly. So please type them in the chat box and Anne and I will answer them by the end of the webinar. Please note that the webinar has been recorded and a link of the recording, the slide decks and a short feedback survey will be sent to you after the webinar ends. Today, I am excited to welcome you to boost your Microsoft Teams presentation skills and introduce you to Anne, our presenter today.
Thank you so much, Sophie, and thank you everyone for joining me today. In today's webinar, we'll learn how to schedule your Microsoft Teams webinar, how to incorporate polls into your webinars, how we can start recording and sharing webinar contents with other people. You can also learn how to activate live captions for accessibility during your meeting or webinar, and then we'll learn to navigate breakout rooms as well. So let's dive in. First features I would like to introduce to you is how you can schedule your webinars. In order to schedule your webinars, you can click the calendar icon on the left-hand menu. You can see it circle red on the screen right now, and then you select webinar from the drop-down in the top right corner. You can create a customized registration form once you start creating a webinar, and don't forget to add presenters to your webinars. So those presenters receive the invitations to join your webinar as well as people who register for your event. By default, whoever create the webinar will be the organizer. Generally, in webinar, there are different roles that have different types of permissions. So the most popular ones are organizers, presenters, and audience. So for organizers, they have all the administrators permissions to control the webinars. Presenters have less permissions, but still they have most of the required features to organize a webinar, such as sharing contents or invite people or start recording captions. So pretty much the same set of features that they need to organize a webinar. And of course, finally, audience are you. Like you in today's webinars, you practically join the webinars view and then chat and then even turn on your mic to ask questions at the end of the webinar. Yeah, in general, this is an overview of how you can create a webinar. Once you have created your webinars, you can edit it as well. When you send the invitations, you can reopen the calendar invites and edit it. And you can add co-organizer, breakout rooms, captions, lobby options, recordings, chat, and others co-presenters as well. You can easily do that by select edit and then choose meeting options. And then you can see a whole set of questions and options that you can choose from to customize your webinar. One of the cool features that I found in Teams is the live captions. Teams can present real-time live captions. In order to turn captions on, you can simply select the More options, which is the three dots are colored purple in the image on the screen right now. And then you choose Turn on Live Captions or choose Start Recordings. The tips to make sure that captions are accurate as accurate as possible is firstly, you need to speak clearly, slowly, and directly into the mic. You should avoid locations with background noise, especially when we work from home a lot and our puppy or our cat or our noisy neighbor might be around. So try to avoid locations that have too much background noises. And finally, avoid having multiple people speak at the same times. Team is smart, but it might feel confused if multiple people speak at the same time and it cannot detect exactly 100% who is speaking what. So avoid having multiple people speaking at the same time. Once you turn on the live captions features, the caption will display at the bottom of the screen, and you will also identify who is speaking it by the name and the profile picture in front of the live captions. Pretty cool, right? There is a slight lag time wise when you switch it on. So you might wait for a few seconds for it to start working. And don't forget to start your webinar recording. Once you start your recording, normally by default, they also turn on live captions as well. But if it's turned off, you know where you can turn it on, right? After we have turned on the live captions, the presenter might want to switch between different modes. And at that time, we have something called presenter modes in Teams. There are 3 presenter modes which allow you to customize how you appear when presenting in Teams. They are reporter mode, standout mode, and side by side. So what are those? At reporter mode, it allows you to place content above your shoulder as a visual aid. With standout mode, your image will float above the content of the slide deck. So the slide deck's more
I'm down.
visible.
Hang on. That's
And
okay.
with the last mode, side by side, it display your webcam feed next to the content that you are presenting. So please feel free to have a try by creating your webinars on your own and then try amongst those presenter modes to see how it works and what works the best for you. In order to turn on or switch among those presenter modes, you can start it by choosing the more buttons and then click on the share buttons, and then you choose reporter, standout, or side-by-side mode on the content sharing tray. You can also customize your background image prior to starting the presentations by selecting Add Background button. So those are all cool features that you can use to assist you, give you a better effects or impacts while you're presenting. In order to switch between the different presenter modes during sharing, you can also use the presenter toolbar. So feel free to test all those features in a test webinars or test Teams meeting, and you can get used to it very quickly. You also, to make a bigger impact while you're presenting, Teams also give you the options to create poll during your meetings. The best practice is to have polls set up prior to delivery of your webinar. With this in mind, we'll be focusing our learning today on creating the poll prior to the webinar. The poll can be launched during the meetings and webinar, so attendees can view and answer them right away. When a poll is launched, it pops up as a notification window on the meeting screen and also display in the meeting chat windows as well. So whoever might accidentally close that window popped up, they can find the polls in the chat windows. In order to add a poll prior to the start of the meeting, choose Edit the meeting invite in your calendar, select Polls, Add, and then save it. Select plus new poll to add a new poll, or you can select a type of poll such as multiple choice or quiz, whichever suits your needs. And then finally, you enter the questions and options and then save it. Repeat this step for all poll questions that you need to add in. Once you have the question in the Polls tab, you can drag and drop them to reorder them. There are multiple ways you can launch a poll, but the most common two ways are the first way is before or during or after the meeting. You select launch on the Polls tab for the poll you're wanting to answer to, and then you can simply launch it. You can also select the polls icon in your meeting to open the polls pane, and then you select launch. Anyone inside or outside of your organization who's been sent the meeting notifications and is using Team can vote. Once the attendees submit their answer, you'll be able to see their responses immediately in real time. And the result can be viewed on the polls tab or polls pane in real time. Polls that have been launched and are currently accepting response will be marked as live. You can see it's circle red, and the live icon is in the red in the image on the left hand side. Polls that are closed and are not currently accepting any responses will be marked closed in dark gray in the top left corner of the poll, so you can easily manage those poll questions. And the final features that I think anyone having a webinars or an online meetings has longing to use before is the breakout rooms. With these features, you can easily break the audience into smaller rooms for discussions. However, in Teams, only meeting organizers using the desktop version of Teams can create and manage breakout rooms. So as I mentioned before, whoever create the webinars will be the one, will be the default organizer. So that person should prepare and manage the breakout rooms features. In order to create breakout rooms, you select rooms and then breakout rooms in the top panel of your Teams webinar screen. And then once you chose rooms and breakout rooms, the breakout rooms screen will display. You can create the rooms and assign attendees automatically once you have selected the number of rooms to create, or alternatively, you can manually select the people for each room. We're going to look at the automatic assignments as a part of this webinar. We will select automatically and then choose Create Rooms button. You can also assign attendees to breakout rooms when they are created. Teams will just evenly distribute attendees to the room. If you want to move people around later in the meeting, it has to be done manually. In the rooms settings, when you choose room settings, a timer can be set in the breakout room as well. So attendees are aware of when the breakout room session will finish, how much time left for them for discussions. Once the timer expires, the rooms will be closed and attendees are returned to the main meeting screen. So pretty convenient, right? Some important notes that I would like to share with recording and sharing webinars. Meeting recordings won't capture whiteboard annotations or shared notes in your webinars. And when you view a meeting recording, you'll only see up to 4 people's video stream at once. So those are some notes. And recordings are available after the meeting is scheduled to finish, not at the actual finish of the meeting or webinar. The recording is located on the chat tab of the meeting and webinar. So once the meeting ends or the webinar ends, you will find the recordings in there. All recordings will have an expiry date, which is set by your administrator. You can extend this date as well. Only the meeting organizers can download the recording. So make sure the organizer share the meeting recordings with other presenters or the audience after your webinars end. So now I will hand it back hand back over to Sophie for the Q&A sessions.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Anne. That was really informative for everyone. What I'm going to do is pop in the chat the feedback survey. So if you've got a chance to fill that in or are leaving before we finish the question times, you've got a chance to fill that in. In terms of questions, please pop them in the chat box, or you're welcome to come off mute and ask your questions that you might have. I do have a couple of questions that came in before the session. So Anne, I just want to clarify how do you add a video background onto your video display?
Oh, thank you, Sophie. I mentioned it very briefly, so I will let you know again how we can add a background. So as you can see, there are multiple ways to add background, but the easiest way is you open the More button. You use the open the More options button with 3 dots, and then you choose to apply background effects. Once you open it, the background pane will pops up, and then you have multiple options to add new background. You can blur out your background, or you can add a stock image that has already been loaded in there as your background, or you can add your customized background made for your organizations, like Sophie and I are using as your background in there. And then you choose Save to start applying the background effects. Have a try yourself and then see which suits you best.
Beautiful. Thanks, Anne, for that. There aren't any questions in the chat box yet. So the other question I have is that I want to use polls for my next webinar. When is it best to set them up?
Thank you, Sophie. Some of my tips for setting polls, as we already discussed in here, is you need to set it up before your meetings. So you are more active, and then you have more control over the question that you have already prepared. When you create poll, remember to choose to tick the box allow co-presenters to edit your poll as a draft poll. So organizer and presenter can cooperate with each other to set up the polls before the meetings. If you have a poll that just pops up in your mind in the middle of the webinar, feel free to add it in during the webinar as well. Normally, when we hold a webinar like we do today, we usually have 2 people, one main presenter and another one assists with all the important taskwork, such as managing attendees, launching polls, preparing notes, and then adding surveys, and then assist with the Q&A session as well. So you always have 2 people. So in case one of those things goes wrong, the other persons can help them out. So those are my tips. Do you want to add anything, Sophie?
I think that's great, and thank you for explaining that further. There's been no further questions in the chat. If you do have any questions following this session, please feel free to respond to the email and the feedback email, and we will get back to you as soon as we can, or you can jump on the Digital Transformation Hub website and submit an inquiry there as well. Beautiful. Well, thank you everyone for your time today. We will send through the email with the feedback form as well as the recording for this session, and we look forward to seeing you again in another webinar.
Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye.
Thanks, Sophie and Anne.
Bye.
Bye.